Rob Gordon is no stranger to dealing with people in crisis. He has worked in many disasters, from the Millennium Drought to bushfires and earthquakes. As a crisis psychologist, he understands the impacts a disaster has on the individual, those around them, and their whole community, both during the crisis and in the months and sometimes years afterwards. We hope that this video will help you all to understand why you or others are feeling tired, anxious, even a bit lost after years of COVID, and how you can all best navigate the road ahead and get on with life.
Hi everybody, this is very unusual times we're in, and this pandemic that's been going on for the last couple of years has had a massive effect on everyone's lives. What it's involved is a complete loss of our normal routines, the structures of our life. And we've all, as we go in and out of lockdown, have to improvise a new pattern for our lives. Now, one of the things I've learned is that it's the pattern and routine of our life that gives us the sense of stability and security, that we know what's going to happen. And also, when we're in routine and in familiar circumstances, we don't have to spend mental attention and time working out what we're going to do next. We know. So that frees up our mind to do a lot of very important things like thinking about the future, processing the past, and so on. Now, we lose that when we go into an unpredictable situation and we have to invent ourselves. How do we live on Zoom or whatever? So in order to adjust to that, we have to go into a stress state, which really means we arouse ourselves, we activate ourselves to deal with the unknown and uncertainties. We invent new ways of doing things. And the stress response, in order to keep us engaged, keeps overriding the natural reactions we have as to say, I'm sick of this, I don't want to do it anymore. But the stress response says, no, you've got to keep doing it. So in that sense, people have learned to live in a very uncomfortable environment. And one of the things that the lockdowns have caused is a loss of communication. Not so much the formal communication of important information, we can do that with emails and phone calls and Zooms and so on, but the informal, the spontaneous, what I call the unsolicited communication, the communications that you don't ask for but are just given to you. So that if I arrive at work in the morning and 3 people say to me, "Good morning, Rob, how was your weekend?" I immediately know that I'm among friends, or people are interested, or they're pleased to see me. That tells me something about myself. It doesn't add any new information. And this is what we lose, this spontaneity. And we've got to actually then, instead of getting that feedback about ourselves, we've got to actually work from what's inside us. And we can do it for a while, but as time passes, I think I like to use the analogy, we're like my old wheelbarrow in the shed there, which has got a tyre which is okay, but it's a little bit leaky. If I don't actually do anything with it for a couple of weeks, it's really soft and hard to push. So it needs a few pumps. Now, these greetings and the informal communications are like keeping our wheelbarrow tyres tight, keeping us with a kind of feeling about ourselves. And this all deflates as we're in lockdown for a long time. For some of us, we've got nice tight tyres and we can go for a long time. Others of us have got very leaky tyres. We need a lot of import. But everyone's going to be affected. We put that together with the sense that we're overriding our natural feedback processes, and we get this sense that we're constantly using a source of energy that we don't normally attend to. And I think that's why everybody is complaining about how deeply tired they are. But not tired in a familiar way, tired because we're using a form of energy that we don't normally use when we're in our normal routines. And so it's very important that nobody underestimates the cost of these last couple of years. And we respect the fatigue, because the important thing is we've got to recoup that fatigue, and it will take time. There's a couple of things that I think are important as we come out of lockdown. One is that if we've adjusted to lockdown, we've changed our routines, haven't we? And we've begun to rebuild a sense of security around our new home, working from home or being at home or whatever it is. The other thing is, if we felt really hard done by and controlled and so on, that we were being forced to stay home, if we really adjust to that, we actually reconnect our sense of security away from being able to do whatever we want in our normal routines, and we reconnect that to, oh, there's a pandemic on, we'll be safe and secure if we follow all the procedures. We stay home, we sanitise, we wear masks. And so there's a process of reconnecting our security with exactly the procedures that will protect us from the pandemic. So when we come out of lockdown, we've got to actually let go. And for some people, that's going to be quite hard. Some people will say, thank God that's over, I can't wait. Other people will say, hang on, I've become more secure where I'm masking and I'm staying away from people, etc., etc. And so I think everybody's felt a little bit of apprehension of suddenly going back to our normal patterns, going into town. What I've noticed myself is I actually don't compute traffic the way I used to. I used to have all sorts of reflexes, know exactly how long to take, where I could dash into a little gap. And I've made a few mistakes recently because I just haven't actually got that program in my mind. So I haven't been driving in traffic. And you can multiply that by multiple different dimensions of our lives. I think it's really important to notice when things go wrong or you make a poor judgment, and then ask yourself, is that to do with the pandemic? So we've got to expect this period of disruption as we re-acclimatise ourselves to the new life. And there's a few things we can do to help us. There's a few things that we can do to help us acclimatise to the new environment. That is, think deliberately about creating routines for our new life. And perhaps most of us won't go exactly back to the life we had before, and we don't know what we've got ahead of us, but think about what gives you a sense of security in knowing where you are and organising your day, and think about designing a routine and then repeating it regularly, a weekly routine, a daily routine, and so on, because once you get into a routine, it looks after itself, and it's a great support, and we'll find that our energy will start to restore. But we'll have to do that deliberately. So think about the things you have to do every day and how to organise them. Because we've still got a way to go. And I use a very simple analogy to explain this, that when we're in an ongoing stress state, we're constantly overriding our natural tendency to say, I don't feel like doing this anymore. But healthy people will say to themselves, well, come on, you've got to just buckle down and get on with it. And so you override those natural tendencies that normally keep us in our, I call it our comfort zone. So what happens then when you've been overriding that for a long time? Well, you're behaving to yourself a bit like a diver when they're working at depth. You're putting yourself under pressure in a lot of ways. And we know that stress affects our body, our mind, our emotional life, our social life, everything. So we're kind of pressurizing ourselves to actually focus on what we have to do. Now, we know that if a diver works at depth, that's okay, he can do that. The problem will come if he comes up too fast, won't it? He'll get the bends, or she will get the bends. Why? Because the body can adapt to the increased pressure, but it can't reverse those adaptations quickly enough, and then all sorts of things go wrong. But if you come up slowly and you sit around at a certain level and then come up a bit more and a bit more, the body can slowly adjust. Now that's what we call a decompression reaction. Now I observe in people who've been under high stress for a long time, decompression reactions when they come out. Whereas we think with short-term stress, you just breathe a sigh of relief and thank goodness that's over, I'm going to relax now. But if you've been under stress for a long time, it's not so simple. What we see is that it's frequently the case that people go through quite a long period, and I mean, if we've been in 2 years of stress, maybe we're talking about weeks, months, maybe much of the coming year, we're going to be really trying to readjust ourselves. I think we've got to be patient with that. We've got to expect to feel tired and irritable, and there's a very, very important aspect of how we are when we're under stress that I would like to emphasise, because it has a long-term effect. I can explain it this way. When we're in our routine and we're comfortable, in the back of our mind we're constantly ticking over, processing what's going on. By that I mean we're thinking about what happened yesterday, and if there was a bit of an emotional exchange, we're sort of working it over and sorting it out in our minds. We're anticipating what's to come, and we're getting ourselves geared up for maybe some challenging work, or maybe we're planning. Could be just every now and again we think about the birthday party we've got to organise for our kids or our grandmothers or something, and working out how we do it, and gradually by the time it comes to sitting down we've done a lot of the planning already. So in this way, in our normal life, we've got spare mental capacity to be dealing with the past, planning the future, processing the present, and what we're doing is I call it digesting. We're digesting everything, bringing it all together, making it part of me and my life. Now, we can't do that when we're under stress. That's what we have to put aside to free up the energy to focus on the constant output that we have to make, the inventing new ways of doing things, finding out how to make the bloody computers work, and so on. All of those trivial things. They don't have to be big problems, just trivial problems that occupy our full attention. Now, when we've been under stress, there for sure is a sign that the stress is starting to tell, and that is memory problems. And there's a few sort of typical memory problems. Forgetting what you went to the bedroom to get by the time you get there, and so you come away and you go back to your study, and you get to your desk and you realize, oh, of course I was going to get my glasses, and you wander all the way back up again, and maybe it happens even a couple of times. Forgetting where you've put things. Actually, I always forget where I put things on my computer. I file them away, and it seemed like a good place at the time, but I can't remember my train of thought as to why would I put it in that folder and not this folder. So you waste a lot of time. This is not, strictly speaking, memory problems. Memory means recording so that you can find it again. It's actually the organisation of memory. Working out, I know I've got to get something from the bedroom, but I can't remember what it is. I know I've put something in a file, but I can't remember where I put the file or which file it is. It's the organisation of memory. And the reason that happens is because organising ourselves is what happens in this processing I've described, digesting. It's putting things in order in our mind. Now, when you can't do that for a period of time, there's a very particular experience that we start to have, which is, I'm getting sick of this. I wonder who's running my life. In fact, I don't feel I'm living my life. I'm just trying to run alongside and keep up. And that can go further into say, what's the point of doing this? I've recently been working with some of the schools that have been very affected by COVID and bushfires, and students are saying, why do we have to learn this? Well, actually, students say this quite often. But this question of the sort of bigger reasons for doing things, the motivations, the purpose, the meaning, these we don't have the opportunity to spend time on. And so one of the big symptoms of this decompression reaction is I lose my bearings. I've lost my sense of purpose. I've lost my values. I forget why I'm doing this and living my life the way I am. And I think it's very important not to get too worried by that and say, well, you must have had a purpose beforehand, and if you can reconnect with that, it'll still be there. And how do we reconnect with it? Well, I think there's a very simple recipe. You need to actually step out of the stress. Oh, that's all very well, you'll say to me, but I've got all these problems in my life. Well, actually, it's not about leading a happy, problem-free life. It's about getting your brain into the state where you can process things. And I think it's a very simple recipe. Pleasure and leisure. Leisure is when you don't have to do anything, so you can't possibly be under stress, can you? Well, we can actually create a routine where we actually program in a bit of leisure every week. Sunday afternoon, for instance. I'm not going to do any work, I'm not going to fulfill any responsibilities, I'm just going to take time out. Or maybe if that really feels good, you could do a bit on Saturday afternoon as well. And why not do a little bit on Wednesday evening? And so on. And you start to build a routine that gives you just processing time, where you don't have to do anything. You can do whatever you feel like and you'll tune in. And pleasure. Pleasure, that means enjoyment, satisfaction, feeling satisfied with what you're doing, having a sense of achievement and accomplishment. And I think it's really important that we do things that are simple, that we get immediate feedback. Try and start a project like a gardening project or a knitting project or reading a book or anything you like, where you'll be able to dip into it and out of it when you have a few spare minutes, and just go on and you get that sense of satisfaction. And what that will give us is this opening up of the mind and the ability to reconnect with who we are and what we're on about. So it's really important to realise that we're all carrying a deficit from our time the last 2 years. And it's during this later part of the recovery period, and it could be that people are recovering from fires, floods, droughts, anything, windstorms, where they've been in a lot of very heavy working. They've still got a lot to do. It's so important not to fall for the idea that I've got to put my head down and my backside up and go like hell and fix my problems. What I observe with people is they can't do it for long enough before they start to lose things, lose their sense of where they're headed. Their health starts to tell. And because we've got this period over the next year or two where things are going to be very uncertain, we've got to protect ourselves. That means going back to that pleasure and leisure and being aware that we've got this decompression reaction will be going on the whole time, and pay attention to things which reconnect us with what gives our life meaning. Anything that really gives your life meaning must be factored in. We can't live without it. So what I'd be suggesting is things like connecting with friends and family, engaging in pursuits and activities and hobbies that give you a sense of personal satisfaction. We know that the factor from a lot of research overseas which best predicts how well people recover from disasters of all sorts is not how much money is spent in the community or how much political influence they have, but what they call social capital. Social capital, that's like relationships. Capital is money in the bank that you can pull out and use for a problem. Social capital is relationships, goodwill, people who come and help you with a job, or people that you can ask a favour of or get information from, or who will know somebody else who can help you. And so with COVID, what we've had is this deterioration of the social fabric. And one of the sure signs that people are under stress is they bicker and disagree with each other, and they feel unhappy with things, because under stress we become egocentric. Egocentric, I'm about me and my survival of my stress, and I can't stretch myself to other people. And so we see this tension in communities. And it's wonderful to see if communities simply start getting together, sharing their experiences, processing information together, helping each other out. You just see how the enjoyment of coming together, they'll all pump up each other's wheelbarrow tyres, and you'll get this sense of, yeah, I remember what the purpose of life is. It's actually living together and doing something useful. So in the next 2 years, we've got uncertainty. Now I've got this very simple equation which says threat multiplied by uncertainty equals the measure of anxiety. So uncertainty means I don't know what's going on. There's a threat coming, I don't know what's going on, I don't know when it's coming. So therefore anxiety is fear of what might happen, not fear of what is happening. That's fear, I react to it and it's all over. Anxiety is about what might happen. It's a very uncomfortable feeling because we can't do anything because it hasn't happened yet. So we don't know what the threat is, what's going to happen with the pandemic and what some of the consequences of the pandemic will be. But we know that there is going to be uncertainty. And so anything we can do to put a stable, certain framework around our uncertainties is going to reduce our anxiety. I know who I can ask for help. I know what services are available. I'm not in it by myself. I've got access to information so I can work out what I should be doing when things happen. And I think one of the things we notice is this question of resilience. Now, resilience is a very interesting word. It comes from a Latin word that the Romans used. The Romans were a pretty resilient bunch. And resile is if you forgive my Latin pronunciation, resiles in the Latin dictionary, it means to spring back. And somewhere very close to that word is the Latin word for reeds, reeds in the river. And if you think about it, reeds is a word something like sile or sile, whatever it is, sale maybe, and the re means back again. So reeds back again is where it comes from, because of course reeds are these wonderful plants that just go flat when the flood comes, and then when the sun shines and the wind blows they just stand up again, don't they? Because the essence of resilience is that with these reeds is that the structures can stretch and deform and let the problem go over them and without being destroyed, whereas a tree gets swept up by the roots and it's gone, it's going to die, it can't come back. So the essence of resilience is hanging on to the key things of our lives and allowing to flex and adjust and keep them going no matter what, so that even if we can't do it fully, as soon as we've got the opportunity we can re-engage. And I think that really means valuing relationships, activity levels, and looking after our family life, being aware of our irritability and making sure that if we do lose our temper with each other that we apologise and say we don't want to be like this, and try to create an opportunity to have a good interaction for a little while, to make sure that we go out and enjoy ourselves when we have the opportunity. And I think it's really important that in the next couple of years that we have a forward-looking approach to it. Instead of thinking, we're back to normal, everything will be all right, and then, oh my God, we've got another lockdown, or oh my God, we've got a variant of the pandemic has come and we all have to get vaccinated again, or whatever it might be. We have no idea what's ahead of us. I think we can have an attitude which I call an attitude of poise. Now, poise is when you're balanced and you're ready to adjust. I can remember when I used to commute on the train many years ago. I found that if I stood in a certain way with my legs a bit apart at 45 degrees to the angle of the train, with my knees slightly flexed, I could just balance myself and I could read a book. I didn't have to hang on to the strap all the time, and I could just read a book. That's what I call poise. Now, Of course, if the train really lurched, I would have to grab onto something, but it's this ability to just be flexible and ready for change. And I think if we accept a period of uncertainty over the next while, then how long? Well, let's say for a couple of years, and that we will actually flex and adjust to things so that we can keep hanging on to what is really important to us. And I can't emphasize enough that all of the research points to we live in societies, we live in communities. It's not enough to just be in our close relationships, our families and our immediate friends. It overloads them when we're all stressed. We need to get out and mingle with those people who are sharing this experience with us, who are going through this problem. And we need to exchange information and talk together. What I notice after disasters is that communities who are able to meet and talk together, they process their traumas. They let go of their frustrations. They feel part of something bigger, and that makes it all the more manageable. So I would really emphasize that whenever we can over the next period of time, I think it's most important we reactivate all sorts of community activities and try to create multiple opportunities that will draw people out of their sort of maybe somewhat habitual lockdown situation, the nervousness of having to face the social world that I haven't had to deal with. It's always got its stresses, but to actually entice people out, invite them if they are reluctant to come, because that's where the real strength is, the strength of being part of a community. And then we will get through this time, and we'll find that we have that particular quality that's being talked about now as post-traumatic growth. That is, we really learn and grow in a unique way out of very stressful experiences if we can adopt this creative, positive attitude towards the future. As we go forward out of lockdown and into this uncertainty in the coming year or two, I think there will be a lot of opportunities to support each other. And I think one of the things to realise is perhaps as part of this, what I've called the decompression reaction, people may hit difficult times where their behaviour changes, their patterns of living change, their moods, their attitudes change. And I think it's really important that we keep note of that in ourselves and for each other. Because I think there's no question that preventive help is more effective than remedial help. By that I mean, if someone is just really struggling a bit and feeling a bit down and so on, and it's not shifting, then I think it's most important to feel it's a good time to go and to speak to somebody with training who can help you understand just exactly what's happening. Because usually we don't really understand it ourselves. That's why we're feeling the way we are. And a professional can often just go through and analyse with you what's going on and often pick up where the tangle is and give you some simple strategies to start moving forward again. And this is really satisfying work for the professionals to do, and I think it's so important that we take advantage of that. And if people are really finding it difficult, it's even more important to actually get into the environment where you can get that professional assistance, because we've got a long and uncertain way to go here. We often notice that if you take the simple analogy of bushfires or so, there's a sort of an up and down sequence of demand for services and difficulties, and then it settles for a while and then it comes up again and goes down. But when you follow people through, you'll find that each of those peaks where there's a demand for services involves different people. And what that means is that people all have their own particular timing when they run out of steam. They start to feel low and depressed and anxious. They just can't get out of bed or whatever it is. Or they get irritable and bad-tempered. We've all got our time frame, and I think you'll find that the people will hit that wall at all sorts of times. And there's a lot of information available now about mental health first aid, about how to observe the people you're concerned about. And I would encourage people who are worried about somebody to actually maybe go and meet with a professional person themselves, just to talk that through, because that's often a way in which you can, if somebody's reluctant to do it themselves, you can actually have a bit of a discussion about an approach you can take that might be supportive for them. And I think that there are also a range of very simple things that anyone can learn: how to listen, how to encourage someone to talk, some simple strategies about managing stress. And there's a lot of information available, and there are links available in association with these materials. And so we can all do the same thing we do for understanding, well, COVID and sunstroke and snake bites and so on. We all have to have this knowledge in Australia. And so now we need to include this taking care of our emotional state and our mental health as a community for each other. And we often need to be prompted by somebody else to take care of ourselves. So we're going to need that support as we go forward.